Welcome to the Worth the Fight podcast, where we bring you powerful conversations centered around psychedelic integration and the practices that can help us massively level up our games. Integration means to make whole, and I'll be introducing you to wholehearted guests who, through their inspired transformational journeys, tell the Worth the Fight story. Together, we will demystify psychedelics, ignite hope, and fast-track personal growth. I'm your host and guide, Matt Simpson, author of the book Worth the Fight, Acting for a Better World, a guide to spirituality, psychedelic medicines, and overcoming trauma. Buckle up, it's going to be a wild ride. Thank you so much for listening. Our next guest on the Worth the Fight podcast is a psychedelic pioneer and religious scholar, Dr. Rick Strassman. He's the author of DMT, the Spirit Molecule, an account of his DMT and psilocybin studies, which has sold 250,000 copies as of mid-2021 and has been translated into over a dozen languages. He co-produced an independent documentary by the same name, which was the most streamed independent drug documentary on Netflix. He also is the author of DMT and the Soul Prophecy, Joseph Levy Escapes Death, and a co-author of Inner Paths to Outer Space. He has published over 40 peer-reviewed scientific papers and has served as a reviewer for 20 psychiatric research journals. He has been a consultant to the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, the National Institute on Drug Abuse, Veterans Administration, hospitals, Social Security Administration, and other state and local agencies. He has provided consultation to many of the psychedelic startups that began appearing in 2021, including Atia, MindMed, and the Noetic Fund. He is on the scientific advisory boards for the Alexander Shulgin Research Institute and Ninian Therapeutics. He currently is Clinical Associate Professor of Psychiatry at the University of New Mexico School of Medicine and lives in Gallup, New Mexico. This was such a special honor sharing Dr. Rick Strassman's contrarian view of the psychedelic research and what's going on right now. He is largely an unsung hero who doesn't get the proper due for being a first mover back in the early 1990s. 20-some years after the governmental shutdown in the early 70s with the Controlled Substances Act, Dr. Rick Strassman was the first mover to get this up and going, and there's a lot of praise and applause to Johns Hopkins for their work with psilocybin that began in the early 2000s, but it was Dr. Rick Strassman who really got this going, and his documentary DMT, the Spirit Molecule, meant so much to me at a time when I was extremely vulnerable and trying to understand what the heck just happened with this deep healing that I had with ayahuasca. I just listened to his audiobook DMT and the Soul Prophecy. It's a fascinating angle that he's coming from that we'll be talking about in this podcast. Without further ado, I give you my conversation with Dr. Rick Strassman, a psychedelic pioneer who's done incredible work for our human family. It's a tremendous honor to share. Thank you so much for listening. I'm here with Dr. Strassman, the author of The Spirit Molecule and DMT Soul Prophecy, a pioneering thought leader in the psychedelic space, one of the original researchers who's been at this since the 1990s. Welcome to the Worth the Fight podcast. It's such an honor to have you on the show here, Dr. Strassman.
Thanks, Matthew. Thanks for having me on.
My absolute pleasure. So what was it that inspired you back in the 90s to engage in this provocative, vitally important service work?
Well, I actually started to conceive of doing this kind of research when I was an undergraduate in college. When I was 20, I had a flash that I was going to study psychedelics and combine the study of psychedelics with Freudian psychoanalysis and Buddhism, and brain physiology. So this was 1972, just a year or two after the passage of the Controlled Substances Act put all of the psychedelics into the most highly restrictive legal category. So any new human studies basically had ground to a halt within the last year or two. So I applied to 21 different medical schools, and when they asked me why I was interested in going to medical school, that's what I told them. And I was rejected by 19 of those schools because it just wasn't the right time and place for some whippersnapper, 20-year-old to start, talking about this stuff. But still, my interest was piqued back then because of similarities in the descriptions of the psychedelic state and the states that could be produced through certain kinds of meditation, the visions and the voices and the out-of-body experiences, the extreme emotional states, those kinds of things. And I believe there must be some common biological denominator to the extent that those two states of consciousness overlapped in their characteristics. So that, inspired me to, look into what that common biological denominator might be. And it's a lot easier to, to induce a altered state with, or an extreme altered state anyway, with, psychedelics as compared to producing an intensely altered state through meditation. Psychedelic, drug research, was the avenue, that I chose to explore in order to start, looking at, the biology of spiritual experience, more or less. So I went to medical school, trained in psychiatry, got some academic research, training during a fellowship. I started off, looking at the pineal gland and melatonin. Because of the long illustrious history of role of the pineal in esoteric physiologies, of the chakra system, of Hinduism, the Sephirot of Kabbalah, and this was the 1980s, and there wasn't really that much known about melatonin at the time. The primary endocrine product of the pineal gland. So I cut my teeth, became an independent clinical researcher studying melatonin back in the 80s. There were some data indicating that melatonin could be psychedelic, and if that were the case, it would produce or it would set up a tidy package. The pineal gland is active at night, you dream at night, perhaps overactivity of the pineal production of melatonin was associated with highly altered states. But it turned out that melatonin was only sedating psychologically. And after my study was completed, I had begun learning about DMT, which is also a naturally produced compound in the body. But it was extremely psychedelic. It had been given to humans before, so after completing the melatonin study, I moved into the DMT work.
Thank you for that backstory and 19 universities. That is very admirable. Your persistence to say, hey, this is something I'm going to do. This is a calling of sorts to pursue and to stick it out in a time of. I've been reading a lot about the 70s and the backlash and the fearful time. I just read The Immortality Key and some of the work from Dr. Ruck, and about how poorly timed that was in the late 70s, and how that wasn't received because of the culture and because of what had happened with the backlash. So go ahead.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of really good books describing what happened back then with psychedelics. One is called Storming Heaven, and the other eludes me right now. But Storming Heaven was about psychedelics, MK Ultra, the CIA. Vietnam, Tim Leary, all that. And the other book, I can't quite remember exactly what it's called, but it came out around the same time as Storming Heaven, and it's quite good.
Was it The Road to Ulysses?
No. Let me take a quick look on Amazon. Actually, now you've got my interest peaked. Amazon's going. Daisy.
Yeah, Storming Heaven. I recall hearing accounts that they were portraying what went down and the CIA and MK Ultra and all that stuff.
Yeah, well, in addition, the other one is called Acid Dreams.
Okay.
Yeah, and they're both great. They both came out, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 years ago. And they describe the utter chaos that was going on in the US at the time, and the role of psychedelics, both taken on the street in the field, and also being given surreptitiously by the government, and the psychiatrists that were involved, and the politicians and the spooks and all that. Yeah.
Wow. Well, this research you were doing with melatonin ultimately led you to DMT. What were your findings with DMT and the spirit molecule that I had read back in probably 2015 after my first ayahuasca experience, when I was trying to make sense of like what the F was that? What was that? And that was extraordinarily helpful to know that this research was being done. And I'd love to hear you speak to your findings with DMT and its implications. And yeah, love to. And of course, I'm very excited to share the DMT Soul Prophecy, which we were talking on the pre-call that I just had the opportunity to listen to, and I was oof.
Yeah, the DMT book is cool, because it's an account of the work I did and some speculation, but the prophetic states book, DMT and the Soul of Prophecy, in a way I'm more proud of that, because I kind of had to teach myself biblical Hebrew over again, master biblical philosophy. Yeah, it was a lot more of a stretch. It was an 18-year project, actually, that the prophetic states book. And let's see, when I think about the DMT book, the spirit molecule, I conceived of that work in 1972, and the book came out in 2000. So that's a 28-year project. So yeah, I tend to bite off big projects. Well, the DMT study, I was thinking, if I gave DMT in as neutral an environment as I could, was DMT inherently spiritual? And the model that I was bringing to bear for spirituality was the Zen Buddhist model, which I'd been steeped in for a couple of decades by then. So I was expecting an enlightenment, Kensho, mystical, unitive state, no form, feeling, consciousness, perception, thought or volition, complete emptiness. And as opposed, to all the studies, or most of the studies going on, nowadays, it was a non-patient population. They were all normal volunteers, and we gave no preparation. We weren't interested in, the attainment of any particular state. We were interested in people, having their experiences in a supportive environment, but with no expectations. Just go in there, keep your eyes open, so to speak, and report back to us all you can once you come down. So I was, thinking, or some of my underlying assumptions, or hypotheses were that if we gave DMT and it replicated certain features of non-drug spiritual or other kinds of altered state experiences, then you could propose a rule for naturally occurring DMT in those non-drug states. So for example, if you gave DMT and it replicated certain features of the near-death experience, that would be support of the idea that naturally occurring DMT produced in the brain is mediating those same properties of the NDE. So we just told people DMT is smoked on the street, and we wanted to replicate the use of DMT on the street as a drug of abuse, basically. So the intravenous route was the way we decided to give it, as opposed to smoking it, which would have been much more complicated. You cough, you may not get it in as much as you need. There's long, or there's potential toxicity of the lungs. And when you give it intravenously, you're insured of all of it getting in. So we told people it was fast, it was over quickly, you would lose awareness of your body, and you might think and as a result you might fear that you've died, but don't worry, nobody's ever died from DMT. And if you get into any medical sorts of problems, we'd be there to help out. So that was the preparation. Everybody in the study was an experienced psychedelic user. So they kind of knew what they were getting into. Only a small number had smoked DMT before. The vast majority had not. And back in the early 90s, DMT was still a relatively obscure compound, so there wasn't a expectation of any particular kind of experience. So we gave a number of different doses. I'll describe the high dose experience, which began almost immediately within a few heartbeats. And the room would break up visually with eyes closed. There'd be kaleidoscopic display of colors and patterns. Then in the beginning, oftentimes with the rush, the intense feeling of acceleration and inner tension, which is the hallmark of the beginning of the DMT experience. Then that culminates in losing awareness of your body. You're transported into a world of light, rapidly morphing, buzzing, intensely saturated colors, and usually those would coalesce into specific images, things that you actually saw and could recognize more or less, or you could describe. There was a sense, presence in that space, which sometimes would take recognizable form. Reptiles, humanoids, sentient furniture, sentient space, DNA, insects, all kinds of objects. And you would interact with those things. Those beings is the term that I decided on, as opposed to entities or aliens or those kinds of things. Beings is a bit more generic. So you would interact, with those beings, usually, for the good, but, sometimes, they would be, frightening, or, seem, to cause, pain and hurt, but usually they were benign, beneficent even. And, then you start coming down within, maybe 10 minutes. So the content actually, as opposed to uniformly, being one kind of experience or the other, like a, mystical white light state of emptiness and, God realization or things like that. It was completely dependent on the personality, the psychology of the volunteer. So there was only, one mystical experience in the whole group of nearly, 6 people. And, that experience was in an individual, that was a religious studies major in college, was interested in mystical states, was, part of a, religious organization, that emphasized mystical experience. And, he always wanted one, and he got one. The only, classic, kind of near-death state occurred in a nurse with a long-standing interest in NDEs. She'd been reading, books on NDEs, was, hoping, to have one. That was the reason she volunteered, and she had one. An urban shaman, had a shamanic, dismemberment and reconstitution experience. Software designer, saw the sources of zeros and ones. So everyone, had their own trip. It was not dependent on the drug itself to, there was no intrinsic effect of the drug. It wasn't a mystical drug. It wasn't a Kensho drug. It was a psychedelic. It was mind manifesting or mind disclosing. It brought to light and made more convincingly real things which were already more or less conscious in the individual's mind. So that was the main finding, was that DMT was not inherently spiritual. It was only magnifying, amplifying things which were already there, more or less consciously.
Fascinating work that you've done. Again, I applaud your bravery to push forward in a time of prohibition back in the 90s to do this work. And what's coming to mind for me is the notion of, and I'm surprised to hear that. I guess I didn't catch that in the book. That the DMT experience didn't reliably, like the Johns Hopkins studies with psilocybin, are reliably inducing a mystical experience. I'm surprised.
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, the Hopkins studies are inspired by their lead psychotherapist, who's a fellow named Bill Richards, who was a grad student, early scientist at the University of Maryland in the 60s and the early 70s. And Bill started off as a religious studies major. I think he's got a master's of divinity. He's not a psychologist. He got his doctorate in educational counseling or something like that. So he's not trained as a psychologist, even though he's got a psychology license in Maryland. That's not his training. His training is theology. And so as a young man, he was interested in the mystical experience, and he went to Germany as a postdoc, I think, or even a grad student, and he had some psilocybin experiences, and they confirmed his pre-existing beliefs that mystical experience is available. You can get it through drugs. So he returned, to Maryland, and was, one of, the leaders of, the group, back then, which included Stan Groff and Walter Pankey and Bill Kurland, Charles, Savage. So they, built a model which proposed that psychedelics induce a mystical experience, and because of the utility or the benefit of a mystical experience in mental health and giving up alcohol, becoming a good person, that you could just apply that state to any number of conditions, and you would get better. And they developed a questionnaire, which was at first called the psychedelic questionnaire or the peak experience questionnaire, but as they became more religious, as it were, at University of Maryland, they started calling it the mystical experience questionnaire. But to conflate an experience on drugs in a research unit with the same experience which is had by St. John of the Cross, St. Teresa of Avila, Jesus Christ, John the Baptist, Abraham, Moses, those aren't the same thing. They're facsimiles, but they're not the same thing. That's not to say that facsimiles are not helpful. Facsimiles can be beautiful. I have a facsimile of the Annunciation by Van Eyck. I can show it to you. It's in the corner there, but it's an inspiring imitation. Let's see if I could show it to you. Let's see, maybe I can't. Yeah, it's in the corner there, someplace. But in any event, it's an inspiring facsimile. I saw the original, and it's astonishing, and the print is quite good. But yeah, so to call drug-induced experience, which checks off certain boxes in a rating scale that measures certain psychological phenomena, to call that a mystical experience is, I think, it's just not cool. It's not the same thing. It's intellectually dishonest, and it's also it's foisting an agenda on the people who are in those studies. You can call it mystical mimetic, which I think is the more accurate. It's mimicking a mystical experience phenomenologically. But and I do lots of peer reviewing of scientific papers which are submitted to journals for consideration to be published. And when people start talking about mystical experiences, I cross that out and I say high scores on the mystical experience questionnaire. And if they say no, it's a mystical experience, I say, if you insist, I'll say mystical mimetic, but you're not, but I'm not going to suggest publication of a paper which is talking about mystical experiences, and I'm unchallenged. So with that as a caveat, the Hopkins group in the beginning of their work was basically following the old University of Maryland model, which was mystical experiences are curative, they're healing, and they're intense and they're meaningful. So they will give you 10 to 12 hours of preparation to have a mystical experience. They talk to you about mystical experiences. They say these drugs can induce a mystical experience. Mystical experiences are universal. They underlie all religions, and they're curative, and these are their characteristics. And when you're tripping next week or next month, this is the way to maximize the possibility of having a mystical experience. They give you a questionnaire that measures mystical experience, and after you come down and you work on integration, it's with the idea in mind that you had a mystical experience or you didn't, and you integrate the effects of the drug session using the mystical experience framework. Like, for example, afterwards, what do you read? You don't read the Bible, you read mystical literature to maybe anchor your on your mystical experience after the case. So in a way, people are being primed to have a particular kind of experience. Well, it isn't in a way. They're absolutely being primed to have a particular experience, it isn't anything inherent in the drug itself. It's the drug working on a mind that's prepared to have a particular experience. The notion that psilocybin is entheogenic or mystico-mimetic is it's baseless. Because look at how Charles Manson used LSD. These were people with ideas about society and violence, and they were lost, And they found Charles Manson, and he gave them LSD, and he convinced them of all of these crazy ideas, which more or less were latent in the mind of his followers. So it it again points to the relevance of calling these compounds psychedelic, as opposed to anything else. They're not mystical mimetic drugs. They're not psychotomimetic drugs. They work on what's already there, and what's already there can be extremely powerfully swayed by those around you. If you give DMT, there was a German study a number of years ago. They gave DMT with the idea that DMT mimicked certain symptoms of schizophrenia. So there were normal volunteers. They got the DMT, and they were given schizophrenia questionnaires, and their scores on schizophrenia questionnaires were sky high. So does that mean that DMT causes psychosis? Not really. But it does elevate scores on a psychosis questionnaire. So in the same vein, does psilocybin induce a mystical experience? No, but it does give you high scores on a mystical experience questionnaire. So that's my soapbox.
Yeah, no, I loved your angle, and almost serving as a checks and balance to a lot of the hype and in calling out. And I felt that in DMT and the soul prophecy, this idea where you're talking about correct me if I'm wrong, the expectancy effect of the experience, of the set and setting, of who's guiding you, how are you coming into this experience on the front end, on the back end. And that has such, and I'm hearing more of this in the psychedelic renaissance being talked about as we keep pushing this forward, as the healers and the providers of these medicines, and I don't want to say agenda, but they have their core sets of beliefs. Like I had a lot of deep transformative experiences in Costa Rica, and it was, in the Santo Daime tradition, but I felt that a lot of that, I don't want to say that it was dogma being put onto me, but that's part of the experience. And it was, it created dissonance for the world here. Being in a completely different culture in Costa Rica, and the expectancy of the healing experience. And it's part, of course, there has to be at some level, how do you strip that? How do you strip the expectancy? How do you take that out of the experience? Sorry, I'm having a tough time saying that. And I also wanted to address that I'm in Chicago, and there's an air show going on out here. So there's that's the loud noise. We got F-18 jets that are flying around.
The sound of freedom. Yeah. Well, I don't hear it. So you've got a well insulated space. Well, how do you manage expectation? Well, you optimize it to serve your intent. Psychedelics increase suggestibility and hypnotizability. There were some old studies from the 60s, where they combined hypnosis and LSD as compared to hypnosis alone or LSD alone. And the altered state with the combination was much greater than either treatment alone. So you are susceptible to the influences around you. When you're tripping, you're susceptible to the influences which you've let in to your mind in anticipation of tripping. So you need to stack the deck in the direction that you want the outcome to take. So it all, set and setting, your preparation, your mental state at the time, your physical state, your expectations, your hope, your fears, your intention. Yeah. And the set of all of, those around you, comprises the setting in addition to the physical environment. You know, a number of years ago, I was a member of one of the ayahuasca churches in the U.S., which has got legal protection, the UDV. And I went there, for an ayahuasca ceremony, Christmas Eve, and I'm Jewish, and it was all about Jesus. This session, Jesus, 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 and it was a real challenge, because I don't have the same take on Jesus that Christians do, or the UDV does. So I mean, it's strengthened my faith in the one God, YHVH, the God of the Hebrew Bible. So ultimately it worked out for me, but still, somebody without that foundation in Jewish beliefs, it may have thrown someone for a loop, just because it isn't consistent with your core beliefs, but you're not that solid in your core beliefs in the first place. And so if you're, well, it bespeaks the importance of knowing what you're getting into, and I'm preparing for it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have a big smile on my face when you said that, and I write about this in Worth the Fight. Just this idea of when I jumped in, I didn't know what I was getting into, and again, there was a big struggle, the dissonance of affiliating so deeply in that suggestible state with this foreign culture to such a profound level of love and connection that I don't feel back home. But the dissonance that created was a big challenge for me. And ultimately that led me to write this 308-page integration program on how to best integrate these experiences to be of service, to be healthy, happy, strong, and again, service-driven towards the society that raised you.
Yeah, I think integration is key. Yeah, but integration is just one of the stages in your trip. Like I had a mentor back in Berkeley, a psychedelic mentor, and I met him for the first time, and we talked about what I was going to do with him, and why, and when, and whatnot. And he smiled and said, "The trip has already begun." So I think that's true. As you're planning and getting ready and preparing yourself, that's one important part of the trip. And then there's the drug, and then there's what do you do the rest of your life?
Absolutely. I'd love to talk about the Hebrew Bible and your comparison with DMT and the importance. What was the inspiration or the motivation to focus? You said it was an 18-year project, or something, that was a long time that you focused on that to bring into the cultural zeitgeist, or this collective psychedelic renaissance. Why did you feel it was so important to highlight that?
Yeah. Okay, that's a good question. Can you hold on a second? I've got some espresso on my
Sure.
desk. Yeah. Well, personal reasons and academic, intellectual reasons. Well, the hallmark of the DMT experience is interaction and relationship. Only one of our volunteers had a like a so-called mystical experience, and interestingly, it wasn't even the white light; it was kind of yellowish. And it started off with beings kind of taking him by the hand and guiding him into the yellowish light. But everybody else maintained their sense of self, Time and space existed, even though, they were highly altered, but still, time went by, things were occupying space. You could interact with the contents of the experience, more or less. It was, full of content, visual, emotional, so it, was not a mystical, unitive experience. Even in the, vast majority of the volunteers who expected and, were, hoping, for that kind of experience. Instead, they were, plopped into this, busy, buzzing, world of these objects and intelligences with which, they interacted. So the DMT state, was not consistent with the Buddhist enlightenment emptiness experience. It was completely different. So that was, one reason. I needed to, find a model that comported with my data better, than the Zen, model did. It may have been the case if I had, been a student of Tibetan Buddhism, especially the more, visualization oriented schools. It wouldn't have, been as inconsistent. But still, the fact was I was steeped in the Zen tradition, and especially, one which, sought enlightenment, Kensho. And the DMT experiences weren't anything like that. The other reason, was that I, parted ways with my Zen community at around that time, in my mid 40s or so. And I think it was, because of my Jewish, genes were beginning to act up. The bowing to the statues was, beginning to kind of chafe me a bit. Like, if you're bowing, why don't you, bow to God? Why are you bowing to these big golden statues, or even bowing to each other? Why don't you bow to God? Why don't you talk about God if you're going to be, talking about, spirituality? What's the matter with God? Basically, it's a long-standing, notion in, within the human race. And my dissatisfaction, with, the tradition, was building over time. Like, I started to study with him in my early 20s, and we, parted ways, 23 years later or so. So it was, catalyzed, I suppose, through, my interest in, talking about the relationship between Buddhist practice and the, psychedelic state. Most of the monks, began, being, monks as a result of their LSD experiences and the, flash of potential enlightenment which came across their minds. And, they were interested in integrating, that insight into their lives in a, methodical, systematic, manner, through meditation and living a meditative life. So they were quite supportive of my interest in studying psychedelics and the relationship between the psychedelic state and Buddhist practice. But as time went on, it became real. Like, I was actually doing the studies, and began writing about the overlap between meditation and the psychedelic state. And it became increasingly untenable, for the monastic organization, to countenance, drugs and Buddhism in the same breath. They were becoming more straight-laced and hierarchical and conservative. So the more I spoke about my interest in somehow at least discussing the areas of overlap, the more they dug in their heels. So it was okay. I'm a grown up. You're grown up. We aren't able. We can agree to disagree, but we're not going to be able to really come to any satisfactory resolution. Yeah, and the bowing was beginning to get on my nerves too. So we parted ways, and I figured, what am I going to study? What am I going to love as a religious scaffolding now? And kind of stumbled on the Hebrew Bible, the so-called Old Testament. And I started reading it, for spiritual, succor, but also I was interested in another, a spiritual model. And as I was, digging, through the text, the notion of a prophetic experience, it began, to emerge. And it was, well, if you look at the first chapter of the book of Ezekiel, it's like a DMT experience. There's a roaring sound, you're immobilized. There's lightning, there's blue, there's fire, there's angels, there's beings with wings and eyes on their wings. There's spinning wheels, spinning globes. There's voices. You're completely blown away. Yeah, that's the first chapter of Ezekiel. So phenomenologically, I discovered there's an unbelievable amount of overlap between the fully psychedelic state from DMT and the fully prophetic state. And by prophecy, I don't mean foretelling or predicting, which is the common understanding of the term. It's more like any spiritual experience that's encountered by any biblical figure. So it could be Moses at the burning bush. It could be on Ezekiel by the river Kavar. It could be Abraham speaking to the angels. Yeah, it could be any encounter with God's angels, any unusual inspiration, any incredibly important dream, out of body stuff, intense emotions, anything like that. So if you compare the DMT state with broad definition of prophetic experience in the text, there's a huge amount of overlap. So I was struck by that. Oh, and in addition, to the phenomenological overlap, another feature that both states share is the utter conviction of the reality of what they're undergoing or what they're witnessing. It's the most intense, true encounter of their lives. It's much more real than everyday reality. So both phenomenologically and the reality sense of the prophetic state and the DMT state was the inspiration anyway to start working on the prophetic states book.
Fascinating. Yeah, again, listening to the audiobook, the notion of, I think that this provides a tremendous service to illuminate the comparison, to illuminate the crossover or the relation between or the similarities, I think would be the best word, and to provide useful utility for people that are having these experiences to ground into a trusted religion or trusted book of teachings that really underlies a lot of Western culture. I think that we're so quick to throw the baby out with the bathwater. This familiarity, this because so many of us are healing from religious trauma or being betrayed, of healing from dogma, mistrust, and we're so quick to just throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's just get rid of it all. But there is value, as you did illuminate in the book, and to show the similarities and to show that this is a tradition. This is a group of teachings that could add benefit to somebody that is on this path.
Yeah. Well, you touch upon a number of important issues. One is, I think, has got to do, with what kind of experience you have versus what kind of experience you're expecting or you're told to expect. So if you're going into drug experience, hoping for and expecting a mystical experience, because you've read about it, the people in the room have primed you for it, and what happens if you don't have it? You feel like a failure. Those in the room are kind of disappointed. Oh, he didn't quite pull it off. There was a study of terminally ill patients that took place at both NYU and at Hopkins, and one of the patients at Hopkins got a minor dose of psilocybin, and so did she have a mystical experience? No. And how did she react? Well, it's hard to say because it's buried in the last paragraph of the supplemental material accompanying the paper, and it isn't in print. You have to track it down online. This lady killed herself 11 days later. She, I would assume, was really pissed off that she got 1 milligram of psilocybin, which has no effect. And she just said, what the heck? I mean, why did I volunteer? And she went downhill and killed herself 11 days later. So that, strictly speaking, isn't an adverse effect of the drug, but it's an adverse effect of the model. And I think the models can have adverse effects. If you're expecting a certain experience and you don't have it, what do you do with the experience that you've had, and what kind of person are you that you didn't have the experience that everybody wanted you to, including yourself? So most people's experiences on psychedelics are interactive and relational. They interact with the contents of their mind. They might have like a spiritual orgasm, let's say, to like the white light, and oh wow. But still, what do you do, with the rest of your session? What kind of words or ideas or, content, can you extract from that white light experience? That all depends on, the rest of the trip, and, how you understand it, and, how the people in the room understand it. So I think, the interactive relational experience is a good alternative. It's a good option to keep in mind. And the tradition, which has worked with the interactive relational spiritual experience more than any other, is Judaism. And the paradigm is the prophetic experience. If you read through the whole Hebrew Bible, all 22 books, there is not one mystical unitive experience in the whole text. So that is not the model, for the ultimate spiritual experience, which is, communing with God. You never become, one with God in the Bible. You become close to God. You speak to God. You can relate to God. You love God. God loves you. But you never become one with God. I mean, that's a completely foreign idea, and it's I think extremely dangerous as well. We could maybe get into that when you start thinking that you're one with God. I mean, what does that mean? But you can you can become close to God. You can try to understand God's mind, the wishes that God has got for you and the world. And it's verbal. You can go to the text and you can read the text. Most people who are angry about their religious upbringing were abused by people who use the Bible as a tool of abuse, control, influence, molestation, and whatnot. Most people never open the Bible after their childhood, if even they opened it up then. So it really requires a level of spiritual maturity and psychological maturity to try to enter into the world of the Hebrew Bible, which is a self-contained it's a self-contained world, much like the DMT world. It's got boundaries, it has contents, it has narratives, it has characters, it has certain teachings, and if you suspend if you suspend disbelief, you're much better off in incorporating and exploiting, taking advantage of what's contained in the DMT world. Like, okay, if it feels more real than real, let me see where this is, where this is heading. And I think if you can, take the same approach, when approaching the world of the Hebrew Bible, without judgment, without saying this is bullshit or it's crazy, I don't believe it, go in with an open mind. If this were true, if God created the heaven and the earth, where does that where does that idea lead you? It would lead you to understanding the word God. What's the Hebrew, what does that mean? What does create mean? What are the heavens and the earth? So you really need to take a sophisticated approach. And most people, including myself, it's impossible to break into understanding the world of the Bible without the commentators. And there have been hundreds of commentaries written over the millennia. The classical ones were active from about 900 to 1500. And there's English translations, and there's ways of approaching the text, which are sound intellectually. They appeal to reason. They're emotionally compatible, pleasing. But still, it requires a fair amount of putting things on the back burner. Like if you don't agree with it, or you don't understand it, you don't tear it up, you don't burn it, you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You put the baby on the back burner, so to speak, and you get back to it later.
So much to unpack there, and we're running out of time here. But I wanted to see if we could, that notion of the danger of being one with God. I think my personal beliefs, I believe that there is a God, there's an infinite intelligence, there's something that is a higher power that is organizing, again, an intelligence. But this idea of living God by loving our brothers and sisters and being stewards to the natural world, and that is when we're in that action state, that we can embody our divinity. And what are your thoughts about that outlook?
Well, yeah, I mean, you get close to God by pleasing God, and if you do God's will, which is to love your fellow as yourself, then you're pleasing God. This is all anthropomorphic. It's, very, complex. And, the way I, got around it was, through my understanding of, karma, cause and effect, almost taught by Buddhism. Everything has got a cause, or multiple causes, and everything causes end up in effects. So karma isn't neutral. It's encouraging certain behaviors and discouraging others. And if you can look at the behaviors which karma encourages because they make you happy or healthy, as opposed to the behaviors that karma, or the behaviors and beliefs which are harmful, you can then transpose that more neutral Buddhist karmic approach in an anthropomorphic manner, that there is a God who created karma to make us or encourage us to do certain things and avoid doing others, then you can start, thinking about your reward and punishment, cause and effect. They start to, kind of conflate with each other in a way that, may not be as offensive, to the Western mind, or, the educated secular Western mind. So if you do good, you're on your pleasing, you're pleasing God. You become a more godly person. You are taking off you're taking off from things that you've learned that are downloaded instructions from God to live a better life and to improve the world around you. There's two main teachings in the Hebrew Bible. One is the Golden Rule, which is to love your fellow as yourself, which is much more difficult than the common version of the Golden Rule, which is self-serving. Do unto others as you want them to do to you. That's self-serving. To love someone as you love yourself, it's way more difficult. First of all, you need to love yourself, which is very difficult. And the other thing is to love your fellow as much as you love yourself. So that isn't self-serving. That's altruistic, and you wouldn't think of it as a logically consistent or a logical way of living your world or living your life. The other notion is that there's one God, who created the universe, the laws of nature, the laws of cause and effect, moral, ethical laws. So you can become, godly, by emulating God, by, doing things, that you've, learned are God's will. You like to love others as yourself. But it's like, the painting, never, says, oh, I'm the painter. So they are fundamentally different things.
Thank you for that, for breaking that down. One last question. There was this. I was listening to the audiobook this morning, and I heard you talk about this burst of DMT synthesizing gene, and I think that you quoted where the world opens up before us all. So we're taking a look into the future of, and that felt a lot to me like this. I feel like we're waking up as a human family, that we're all interconnected at some level, and that there's, I hear Jamie Wheel talking about this in the Recapture the Rapture. We hit a certain tipping point, and where things will change, and I think he even used the word apocalypse, which means the revealing, when we look at the etymology of the word. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts and impressions around that notion, tied with where we're at in these unprecedented, precarious times here in 2021, and what you see in the world, and how kind of looking ahead as to our human family, and are we on the right track, or are we doomed, or what are your thoughts and impressions?
Well, there's a lot there. The quotation that you referred to is my pet theory about the biology of the rapture. If you study the prophets anyway, Isaiah, for example, there's descriptions of a world to come, a messianic era. And world of disembodied souls, which are only alluded to briefly in the text. The Bible is a here and now kind of manual. It's a manual for living your life, as opposed to dying and being reunited with whatever, or being saved forever. It's like we have no idea. So we've got this life. We should act correctly and think right, think straight. But still, it is tempting to wonder about the rapture. And the few allusions which are made in the Hebrew Bible, to disembodied state. There's some overlap with the DMT effect. So there is a gene which makes the enzymes required for DMT synthesis. That's being characterized more and more precisely now. So it is tempting to speculate, although this is way off the rails. Is there may be some stimulus, some worldwide stimulus, let's say a electromagnetic pulse or a comet or some quasar bursting, which turns on the DMT synthesizing gene in every organism that contains it. And then we all get thrust into the DMT world forever. That's interesting material for a fantasy or sci-fi book. Well, where things are heading. I mean, it's 51-49, as my Zen teacher always used to say. It depends on every one of us. It's 51% good and 49% evil out there. So we can't let up. We can't let down our guard. We can't just be passive and assume that other people are going to be good for us. So it is 51-40. Well, it's even closer than that, but whole figures 51-49. I think with respect to the DMT stuff that's out there, concentrations of DMT in the brain are as high as concentrations of well-known neurotransmitters like serotonin and like dopamine, and so that suggests the existence of a DMT neurotransmitter system in the mammalian brain. And because the hallmark of a big DMT experience is the sense of reality, it's tempting to speculate that perhaps what a potential DMT neurotransmitter system is regulating is our sense of reality. So if you have more DMT firing in your brain, the experience that you're having is more real. And is more convincing, is more true, is more important. It will stick to you, over your life. And lower levels of DMT activity with certain experiences, you forget about them quickly. They don't have much meaning. But the question is, what is regulating the system in your brain, which is regulating your sense of reality. So that gets to be pretty spooky. It gets to be fairly mind-blowing. What is controlling the release of DMT on a moment by moment basis. So that's where I think it's going to be very interesting to look at the regulation of endogenous DMT in the human brain, and there are people working on that. It's quite slow. I think it's quite slow because nobody really wants to study it or to fund it. And I mean, I can understand that. You don't really want to start asking those kinds of questions because of what answers you might find. But still, science marches on, and I think at some point we're going to understand the regulation of a possible DMT neurotransmitter system, which will then start to unlock the keys to what is real in the world.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Dr. Strassman. This has been such an extreme honor for me to have this time with you, and thank you for your brave, bold, pioneering work and commitment to the psychedelic renaissance, to our collective awakening, to truth. And where can people find you to connect, and where can they find your books?
Yeah, so they can connect with me, through my webpage, which is rickstrassman.com. And I answer all emails. And you can buy, books on my website as well, and I will sign them and inscribe them. And I have got a couple of pages. I'm on Facebook. One is your private page. One is a public page, and you can follow me on my public page. So those are the main ways. I don't have a Instagram or Twitter account. I'm kind of working on that, and I am beginning to work on increasing my YouTube my YouTube channel repertoire of videos, including this one, so you can subscribe to my YouTube channel as well.
Wonderful. We'll be sure to put everything in the show links and where people can find you and the different places you're on social media and your webpage and all that good stuff. And thank you again. Again, tremendous honor to have this time, and so grateful for you and your work.
Well, thanks, Matthew. That was a good interview. I appreciate it.
My absolute pleasure. All the best.